Cornerback has become one of the most highly debated positions in the 2026 NFL draft. Who's the cornerback one? Is it Delane or is it McCoy? Who's the number 3 cornerback behind those guys, and how many of them should go in the first round? We're going to answer all of that in today's video. Yes, it's the same shirt that I was wearing in the interior defensive line and the linebacker videos. I'm grinding out this draft content for you guys, and the grind doesn't stop as I will be doing a live stream, round 1 of the NFL draft live on this channel. Me and Javon reacting to each and every pick. Make sure you're tapped in for that. Let's talk some cornerbacks. So my number 1 corner in this draft is Mansoor Delane out of LSU. Listen, I'm going to talk about why I went with Delane over Jermod McCoy, kind of in the Jermod McCoy section. So let's focus on Mansoor Delane in this specific spot. Physical profile, 6 foot, 187 pounds, the arm length 30 inches, the 40-yard time, an astonishing 4.38 seconds, a 79 athlete score. At LSU, Mansoor Delane was about as sticky as it could get, and the production matches that. 45 tackles, 2 interceptions, 11 pass deflections, which is just unreal, and a 90.5 PFF score at the position. Mansoor Delane, man, he is absolutely sticky. He has opposing wide receivers on straps all game long. You watch just about 30 seconds of film, 30 seconds of highlight tape, whatever you want it to be, a game, a highlight, you just see immediately that this dude is different at the cornerback position, and he is clearly an NFL talent amongst college football talent. Really good movement. The change of direction is outstanding. The closing speed is really, really talented. I mean, 4.38 40-yard time, but it's one of those 40-yard times that clearly translates to the field. There's sometimes you got some 40-yard times and it doesn't really match what the guys are doing in game. It matches what Mansoor Delane is doing in game, and he always has an ability to get at least one hand on the ball, sometimes two. If I'm being honest, some of those 11 pass deflections probably should have been and could have been interceptions. In zone, he's able to really track the quarterback's eyes, stay with him, and make some big time plays. Could be susceptible to overcommit in some penalties, like a lot of the best corners in the league do. But to me, I fell in love with Mansoor Delane as a prospect. I fell in love with Mansoor Delane as a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I'm praying that we don't let the Kansas City Chiefs get this guy after they lost all their corners, because I think Mansoor Delane, I'll say it, by the end of year 2, could be a top 5 corner in football. The man reminds me a lot of Quinyon Mitchell. And yes, as an Eagles fan, there's a soft spot for me when it comes to Q. I won't deny it. But Mansoor Delane, he's just one of those guys that feels like he is just handcuffed to wide receivers at time. That is how close he is sticking with these guys. I'm surprised there wasn't a Delane Island nickname going around for him at LSU after watching some of the tape. This guy is a really, really talented man. He's going to come into the NFL. He's going to be one of the best cornerbacks in football. And if your team takes him, just know, yep, that was a great draft pick. On to the next one. Because Mansoor Delane, to me, is a can't-miss prospect, and to me, a top 10 talent in this draft. Up next, we got Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee, who, no surprise, is my number 2 cornerback in this class. The debate really is Delane versus McCoy, and it made a ton of sense to me watching the tape. But on the physical profile, McCoy, 6'1", 188 pounds, arm length 31 1/4 inch, 40-yard time 4.38 at his pro day with a 79 athlete score. The man did not play at all in the 2025 college football season due to a torn ACL back in January of this year. So we got to go back to 2024 when we're talking about stats. 44 tackles, 4 interceptions, and 7 pass deflections. And in 2024, he had an 89.6 PFF grade. Do I think Jermod McCoy, if he never gets hurt, is the cornerback 1 in this draft class? I think it's very so possible. But for me, I believe McCoy and Delane are neck and neck as prospects. I think it's more 1A, 1B than it is 1 and 2, if I'm being completely honest. I think both of them should probably be top 15 picks in this draft. The reason I went Delane was a better injury history. These guys are really that close that I will just pick the guy that's been healthier. That is really the only differentiator. They're not the same kind of corner. I think McCoy is more of a physical corner, great in man coverage. I think he's a better tackler than you would expect for his 6'1" size, 188. I think he's great at finishing tackles, but I also think you could trust him to solo tackle tight ends and running backs, which maybe is more of a leg up on Mansour Delane than I'm giving it credit for. He has ball hawk ability, can make some really acrobatic plays. You know, there are the injury concerns, but I said here today, and this guy at his pro day ran a 4.38 post-torn ACL. Am I being overreactive by knocking him down to my cornerback 2 because of injury? Talent-wise, I think it's really, really close. Again, I said it, it's 1A, 1B. If you have McCoy over Delane, I don't hate it. I just think you're betting on him being the guy he was in 2024, and I just haven't seen it as recently on the field, which does lend me to go with Mansour Delane. When it comes to the play style, I think he reminds me of Riq Woolen. I think physical, I think you can be susceptible to penalties when you play that way, but the cornerback position is just one of the toughest in football. Stats don't really tell the full story. Yes, the pass deflection numbers are really nice, but corner to me is like 85% eye test, 15% stat watching. It's really one of those positions that you got to see on film. And McCoy, he's just an elite corner. And at least he was in 2024. And I think post this torn ACL, especially in the big 2026 where we are medically, I'd have no problem and no fear of my team taking Jermod McCoy. But when there's a corner that I think is just as good, if not maybe a little bit better in coverage and neck and neck for him in terms of overall prospect and Mansour Delane, that's why I lean Delane over McCoy. My number 3 corner in this draft class is Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. Chris Johnson's a guy that I think we should see in the first round of the NFL draft. I'm not sure if we will. I think Seattle at pick 32, this could be a really sneaky pick for them to replace Riq Woolen on the outside. The physical profile, 6 foot, 193 pounds, arm length 30 and 5/8 inches, 40-yard time, a really impressive 4.4, and he had an 87 athlete score, which was number 1 for the cornerback position this upcoming season. Yes, the physical profile jumps off the page to you. So do the numbers, man. 48 tackles, 4 interceptions, 8 pass deflections, and a grade of 91.6. I think the one thing that I agree with virtually everybody about Chris Johnson on that scouted this guy is his technique is flawless. This is a guy that clearly is very coachable and clearly took everything that every coach told him to heart and implemented it into his game, which is something I absolutely love to see out of guys that are coming into the NFL. I think he's a very sticky corner, can excel in man coverage and in zone coverage, makes it very, very difficult for wide receivers to complete the catch. You're going to have some really good hands and some really good contested catch ability if Chris Johnson is lined up on you. I think he's got really good tackling technique and can play good zone or man coverage. He doesn't quite jump off the screen the way Delane and McCoy do, but again, I think Chris Johnson is one of the more slept-on players in this NFL draft. You don't hear him talked about a ton in the first round. Sometimes he falls out of the first round. I don't think it should be that way. I think he should be taken in the first round, especially with how many teams need a corner. Kansas City, Miami, Dallas, Seattle. There's just too many teams that are cornerback needy for me to see Chris Johnson fall out of the first round. If he does, it's a damn travesty, because this guy is one of the more pure corners and one of the more pure outside corners in this draft that I think is a lot of guys that are probably better suited to be nickelbacks. Chris Johnson is one of the few guys that I'm like, yeah, that's an outside corner, and that may be a future Pro Bowl outside corner in this draft. At number 4, we have one of those guys that I think is better suited at the nickel position, and that is Avion Terrell out of Clemson. I do think Terrell has the ability to be inside and outside, which is why I have him here at 4, because there is versatility to his game. But let's hop into the physical profile. 5'11", 186 pounds, arm length is 31 inches. The 40-yard time is seemingly a 4.39. There's kind of some mixed reporting out there. There was a 4.6 with a hamstring injury. Then there was a 4.39 apparently. Take that with a grain of salt. A 60 athlete score. Now, for Avion Terrell, I'm going to read off his stats to you guys, and I think maybe, again, I said it earlier, so maybe it's a little contradictory. I don't think stats tell the full story when it comes to cornerbacks ever, but I think Avion Terrell stats tell me that this guy is probably more of a nickel. 48 tackles, no interceptions, 9 pass deflections, 3 sacks, and 5 forced fumbles with an 83.5 PFF grade. Terrell is obviously the younger brother of AJ Terrell. For those of you who did not know, Falcons corner, one of my favorite corners in the league, and wide receivers, the way that they talk about him, you would think he's a top 5 corner in the league. And there are many that think Avion will be the better of the two Terrells at the cornerback position, which to me says a lot. However, I just think that he's clearly a nickel, which is fine. I think nickel is one of the more underrated and actually turning into one of the more valuable positions in the NFL. He's a very pure and hard-hitting tackler for the defensive back position, and you see it statistically, 3 sacks and 5 forced fumbles. Yes, you see it on the tape, but that's one of those things that you see it statistically. 5 forced fumbles and 3 sacks for a corner is not normal, and it's because this guy's got really strong nickel, abilities to his game. I think at 5'11", 186, it probably lends him better to be a nickel as well on the outside, getting matched up against the big body receivers, AJ Brown, Nico Collins, guys like that could be really tough for a guy of Terrell's size. But the fact that you could play him at nickel, I think he could be a Pro Bowl level player, all pro level player in that role, but also similar to a guy like Trent McDuffie, has the ability to be kicked out to the outside corner position. So say you had an outside corner get hurt, but you have more faith in your backup at nickel than outside. I think you could play Terrell on the outside, and I don't want to say not skip a beat, but you lose less than you do. And having that versatility on your defensive side of the ball, I think is really, really good. I think on the outside, he can be beat by bigger receivers and by elite route running, which does worry me a tad bit, but the versatility to Terrell's game is the reason that I have him at 4. But again, I think if you put him at nickel, you have a future Pro Bowler on your hands. At number 5, I also have another Tennessee corner, Colton Hood, man. Hood is another guy that I think is an outside corner in this draft. The physical profile, 6 foot, 193 pounds, 31 3/8 arm length, a 40-yard dash time of 4.44, and an 84 athlete score. Hood was obviously the cornerback 1 at Tennessee this year with the absence of Jermod McCoy. Statistically, 50 tackles, 1 interception, 8 pass deflections, and a forced fumble to his name with a PFF grade of 79.2. Colton Hood, again, similar to some of the other corners in this draft that we talked about with his teammate, even Jermod McCoy, a really physical corner. I think maybe they're just teaching that at Tennessee, personally. Hood was really good in the run game for a cornerback, especially. I thought he was a really strong tackler, but I still wouldn't kick him to the inside. I think you could play him at nickel and be fine, but Hood to me still is just an outside corner that I could trust on the edge and to defend outside runs at the NFL level. He has the ability to stick with wide receivers on the outside. You know, he is 6 foot, and he will be, of course, eventually up against some 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers, but Colton Hood plays above his size, and I wouldn't be shocked if he was a first-round talent, too. That's kind of how I feel about all 5 of these guys. I think all 5 of these cornerbacks could and maybe should go in the first round, depending on need. We talked about it earlier, Kansas City, Miami, Dallas, Seattle. There's probably another team in there that I'm missing, but I think that these guys would all be great additions to those teams. Could struggle a bit in the open field, I think, against some of the more dynamic NFL wide receivers, which is why I have him here at 5. But Colton Hood, to me, a really good, really solid starting caliber cornerback in the NFL. What more could you really ask for? And as we always do, we're going to break these guys down by tier here. Tier 1, pretty simple, Mansour Delane and Jermod McCoy. I think these guys are pretty clearly the top 2 corners in this draft. Tier 2, Chris Johnson, Avion Terrell, and Colton Hood, all for different reasons like we talked about. And a pretty loaded Tier 3 here, D'Angelo Pons, Keontae Scott, Brandon Cisse, and Keith Abney. Aside from Cisse, I think that Pons, Scott, and Abney are all nickels at the NFL level. D'Angelo Pons is a guy who almost cracked my top 5. I think he'd be a really good nickel at the NFL level. Keontae Scott, really good tackling cornerback. I think he has the ability to go inside or out. Cisse, really strong in the run defense. Maybe also a nickel, to be honest. Really good athlete. Keith Abney has some penalty and size concerns, but a decent tackler overall. The quarterback class in the 2026 draft is actually pretty deep overall. Again, as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down down below. If you made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate it if you considered hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, trying to grow the channel on the road to 700 subs right now. I appreciate all of your support. I will catch you next time. Peace.